Begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav from Amud Aleph, 4 lines down from the top of the Amud, Meisvei. The Gemara here brought a statement from Tuvi Bar Kisne that said in the name of Shmuel regarding a case where you have Tumas Oihel. You have a mace, a dead body, inside the room, and because it's under a roof, anything inside becomes Tameh. And now, if there's a wall between this room and a room from another house, so then that room separates, doesn't allow the tumah to pass through to another room. However, if there's a window, if there's an opening that's at least the size of a tefach, then the tumah travels through into the other space, into the other room, and whatever's there becomes tumah as well. But now, if you put something into that space of this opening to clog it, that it becomes less than a tefach, so then it will block the tumah from passing through. So over here, the chiddush that Shmuel said is, whatever you put there to block the tumah from going through, if what you put there is something that has a use for you, and therefore you're going to eventually take it away, that can't be considered to be a block because it's just there temporarily. You're planning on taking it away. That was the chiddush of Shmuel. Now, this is really a subject not related to this Pedic, but as we'll see, the Gemara here is going to bring a braise to ask on Shmuel's halacha. And in the course of what the discussion will be here in this braise, will be related to what we spoke about before in the Mishnah regarding things that could damage someone else's wall that he builds near your property, and therefore you have to distance certain things from your friend's wall. So Dr. Gemara, Meisvei, the question was asked from the following braise on Shmuel's halacha. Asavin shatolshan, if there's grass that a person pulled them out from the ground, and he put it into this window, into this opening between the two rooms. Or grass on its own is growing there in that area in the window, and it closes up some of the area, the opening of the tefach in the windows. We're in the top of Chaf Amud Aleph again. Or if you have rags that is smaller than 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim. The reason why it's mentioning this is because one of the other rules about this is anytime you have anything that's clogging up this opening in the window, but that item itself is makabel tumah, so then because it itself is susceptible to tumah, it doesn't minimize the opening, it doesn't block the tumah from passing through. So if this was a piece of garment that's larger than this size, so then that's considered to be a keli, it's something you can wear and use, so it's makabel tumah. So it wouldn't block the tumah. So it has to be smaller than 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim. 3, it's boys, probably right. Yeah, you got there, it's boys? Yeah, sorry, you're right. Thank you very much. Yeah, 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim is pretty big. Right, this is three finger breadths by 3 finger breadths. V'ha'ever, v'habasar, or a limb, or any flesh, hamuduldalin, which are sort of hanging, bibeheme b'chaya, from an animal or a beast that are standing right there near this wall. The animal standing there, and there's this hanging limb from this animal that is positioned in that opening of this window. So all these things here, as we'll see, the Tana de Braise is saying that they clog this opening to block the tumah. Or v'oif, a bird, sheshachan b'chalain, that landed and is sitting there by the opening of this window. A guy that's sitting there by the opening of this window. Or ben shmeina hamunach b'chalain, a baby that's born after 8 months of pregnancy. The Gemara always says, at least in the times of the Gemara, a baby born after 8 months of pregnancy cannot live. At kedei kach, that even on Shabbos you can't tend to him because he's for sure going to die. So this baby that's sitting there in the window as well, or v'hamelach, salt that's there, or klicheres, or earthenware keli that's there, or a sefer Torah sitting there, kulam mematim b'chalain. These are all things that will remain as they are there, and therefore they clog this window, and the tumah will not pass through. Avol, however, hasheleg, v'haborod, v'haglid, if you have snow, or hail, or frost, or v'akfoir, ice, v'hamayim, or water, kulam einam ein mematim b'chalain. These things that are clogging this opening in the window, they're not going to be memayit the space. They don't block the tumah of going through, because these are things that it's going to melt. It's not going to be. It's going to go away. So therefore, they will not clog this opening. Okay, so now the Gemara will address all of the things that are mentioned in the first part of this braise. Each one of them seem to be things that they're not makabel tumah, and seemingly they stay there. I mean, they stay there longer than water or ice or snow, but still, these are things that a person has a use for it, and he's going to eventually take it away. So how could you say that these will be memayit the opening of this window if Shmuel says anything you take away does not clog, does not block the tumah? So the Gemara starts with the first thing. Grass that's placed there, why would it be memayit? He's going to take it away because he can feed it to his animals. Answers the Gemara, it must be talking about this kind of grass that's poisonous, and he's not going to feed it to his animals. Then the Brisa said, or grass that grew there on its own, since grass that grows near a wall is not good for the wall. And here, the source for this is from what it said in our Mishnah. When you plant zrayim near a wall, the roots ruins the wall, the foundation of the wall. So here as well, if you see that there's grass growing near the wall, you know that the roots can ruin the foundation of the wall. So shakalu, the person's going to uproot these grass, he's going to take it away. So why should this why should this block the tumah? So Rabbi answers, we're talking about a wall of a broken down house where the person doesn't matter to him, the condition of this wall. So he's not going to uproot his grass. He's going to leave it as is. Rav Papa says, even if it's talking about a proper kaisel that people live in, so still we could say that this brisa is talking about grass that a person is not going to necessarily uproot. And the reason is because this grass is growing from an area that's further out. It's 3 tvachim distance from the wall, like we saw in our Mishnah. As long as you plant 3 tvachim away from the wall, then it doesn't ruin the wall. And it's grass that's growing very tall and very far, or whatever kind of weeds it is, and it grows up to this window to block the opening. The next thing it said in this brayse, matloinios, rags. And so if it's smaller than 3 by 3 finger breadths, so then it blocks. But why? You can use this as a patch if you have a tear in your garment. So it's something that you're going to take away from there. And says the Gemara besmichte, it's something which it's a thick piece of garment that can't be used as a patch. But still, the Gemara, it can be used for a bloodletter that wants to use it like as a gauze pad. Still can be used for something. And for the Gemara, no beriske. It's talking about a sack cloth which is very rough. It's not something that can be used for that. The Gemara, beriske, if it's talking about that type of sackcloth, she'ein behem shalish al shalish. So why does the brayse give the shear that if it's small enough that it's not 3 by 3 finger breadths, then it's not makabel tumah? She'ein behem al bar al arba. Regarding sackcloth, it's a different type of material. There, it's a larger size. That if it's smaller than that it would not be makabel tumah. It's 4 by 4 finger breadths, not 3 by 3. So again, what over here it says it's tfachim. Okay, sorry. Okay, so over here it's actually much bigger then. Arba is 4 by 4 tfachim. So it can be a much bigger size for it still not to be makabel tumah. So why does it just say shalish by shalish? And says the Gemara, so you must say ke'en riske. It's not sackcloth, but it's similar to sackcloth. And it's rough enough that it can't be used as a gauze pad, but at the same time, it's not really sackcloth, and therefore it still gives the shear of 3 by 3 finger breadths. The next thing it said in this brayse was v'ha'ever, v'ha'basar ha'meduldalin. If you have a limb or flesh from an animal, the behema b'chaya, animal that's standing right there by this opening, and it's there positioned in the opening of this window. This animal will get up and escape. It's not standing there all day. So how could you consider this, according to Shmuel, how could you consider this something that's there and will remain there to block the tumah from passing through? And says the Gemara, the animal is tied down there. But still shachatle. The person is not going to keep it there forever. He's going to shecht his animal. And says the Gemara, it's an animal that's tummy. He's not shechting it to eat it. It's an animal that he will sell to a guy. And it's the Gemara no b'khusha. It's an animal that's very weak and thin, and he's not going to be able to sell it to anybody. No one's going to buy this animal. So this animal is going to stay there. The Gemara pasik shadile lekladen, but he's still going to untie this animal and throw the meat, or he's going to take away that piece, that aver, that limb of the body of the animal, or a piece of flesh that's meduldal, that's sort of semi-detached from the animal. He's going to cut it off eventually and throw it to dogs to eat. And says the Gemara, no, he won't do that. Because this will cause pain to the animal, he's not going to cut it off. So therefore, this is something that will stay there. And the next case, the Brayse said, a bird that is sitting there in the opening of this window.
Why does it have to say that a limb is being meduldal? Why doesn't it just say that the animal is in front of the window?
And a chanami, true. It's the same thing. If the animal itself is blocking the window, it would be the same halacha. Yeah. If a bird that landed here in this window, the bird is going to get up and fly away. And says the Gemara b'kosha, the bird is actually tied down. He'll shecht it and eat it. And says the Gemara b'tami, it's a non-kosher bird. He's going to sell it to a guy to eat for himself. And for the Gemara bekalanisa, it's a bird that's very thin. You can't sell it for a guy to eat. If that's the case, still, this is a bird that can be given to a child to use as a pet, as to play around with. The person's not going to keep that bird there if you can use it for something. And for the Gemara b'misaret, this is a bird that scratches, so it can't be used as a pet. The Gemara kalanisa loy misarte. This kalanisa bird is a bird that doesn't have long nails. It doesn't scratch. So you can't say it's a kalanisa bird that's very thin, and at the same time you can't give it to a child. And so the Gemara ka'en kalanisa. It is a bird with these long fingernails, long nails, and it's going to scratch. But it's not mamish just kalanisa bird. It's a very thin bird that you can't sell it to a guy. Nobody's going to do anything with it. So it's going to stay there. Then the Braisa said, a guy that sat in this window. The Gemara, the guy is going to get up and go away. How is he blocking the tumah? And says the Gemara bekofos, he's tied down there. The Gemara, a friend is going to come and untie him. And says the Gemara b'mitzaira, he's a guy that's full of boils. Nobody wants to come near him, so he's going to stay sitting there. The Gemara, someone else that's in his condition that's not disgusted by going near him will come and untie him and he'll go away. Ella, so the Gemara says, even if he's not a mitzayra, the case is b'chavushe malchus. It's someone that the government is imprisoning him, and they tied him down right there in that area. So that's the reason why he's not going anywhere. Then the Mishnah, the Braisa that it said, Uven shmeina munach b'chalain. A baby born after 8 months of pregnancy is sitting there in the window. So this is a baby that will not live at all, and he's staying there. In fact, the Gemara, but Asi Imei, Daryule, his mother's going to come and pick him up and take him away. And says the Gemara b'Shabbos. It's talking about on Shabbos that the mother is not allowed. The child, because he can't live, is muktzah, and the mother can't do anything. He's supposed to leave him right there. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braisa, ben shmeina, a child that's born on Shabbos after 8 months, hareu ke'evan. He's just like a stone which is muktzah. V'aser l'taltle b'Shabbos, he's not allowed. The child is not allowed to be moved. Again, this is in the Bismana Gemara, where it was a fact that the child is anyways mamish, like he's a geisis. He's not going to live. He's going to die. So therefore, the child is not allowed to be moved on Shabbos. Aval imoy sheicha olav u'menikasei. The mother may bend over without touching the child and nurse the child until the child dies, if sakana, because the mother may be in danger. If she's not going to nurse, and she could get engorged, and for her it could be a sakana. So the mother's allowed to do that in Shabbos, but you're not allowed to touch the baby and move him. And Tosfos here adds that we must say that the case over here is that the child is going to die right as Shabbos is over, because if not, then after Shabbos you're allowed to move away the child. And the question still remains that the child will be moved. But this is a baby that's born there that's about to die, and therefore it's going to be left there, and even be left as a place where he's buried. So therefore it's going to block the opening of this window. Melach, the Braisa said salt. Frek the Gemara, chazile, the salt could be used. The salt could be used to eat. So how could you say that the salt blocks this window? And says the Gemara b'mirirta, that the salt is bitter, so it can't be used for anything, for any seasoning or anything. Frek the Gemara, chazil la'oiris, the salt could still be used for salting when you are softening the hide of an animal, the process of making leather out of it. And says the Gemara, no, there is big koitzi. There are thorns in this, so it can't be used. Frek the Gemara, but kivin the kashi l'kaisel. We're talking over here about salt. Now, salt is not good for the wall. This is also connected to what we learned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that salt produces a certain level of heat that is not good for the foundation of the wall. So shakla, he's going to take away the salt from there. And says the Gemara, the yasfa chaspa, the salt is not sitting there on the ground itself near this opening of the wall that it's going to ruin the wall, but it's sitting on a broken piece of earthenware. So if the salt is not there itself, it's on top of a broken piece of earthenware, so why are we talking about the salt? And the broken piece of earthenware itself should be the separation in this window, in this opening in the wall. And says the Gemara, the lesba shiyura, that this broken piece of earthenware is very small, doesn't have any amount that it can be considered that it can be a blockage in this opening. It's like it's not there at all. Keditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, cheres, the halacha of a cheres, what is the minimum amount of a cheres that it has some level of significance? This is said b'negeh to taking out a cheres, carrying it out in Rosh Hashanah on a Shabbos. What's the minimum size of a cheres? A small piece of cheres that could be used in the pillars that there are in a window that are holding up the building over here, that there should be an opening of the window. So they had this little piece of cheres that they placed between these poles or little columns that there are in this window, and that cheres is placed there to hold it in place. That's the size of cheres that they cemented in. That's minimum size that you can carry and use for something. So over here, this is something that's smaller than that, so therefore it doesn't at all block the whole of the window between the two rooms. Then the Brisa said, Kli cheres, an earthenware keli, which is in this window, and Rashi points out, we must be talking about where the earthenware keli, the back of it is what's facing the room where the dead body is, because if it's the opening of it that's facing there, then it would be makabel tumah, and anything that's makabel tumah is not chaytzis. But so it's not makabel tumah because it's me'achayrav. But the question still is, chazile, he would use this kli cheres for something, so why does it block the opening? And says the Gemara, the mitnef, it's dirty, so he's not going to use it for anything, to eat from it. The Gemara, it could be used for something else. It could be used for a bloodletter that needs some kind of keli to not for eating. And says the Gemara, the minkav, it has a hole in it, it can't be used for anything. Sefer Torah. Then it said that there's a Sefer Torah here that blocks. The Gemara, mikra, it can be used to learn from it. And says the Gemara, bebali, that it's worn out, you can't learn from it anymore. The Gemara, if that's the case, why is he leaving it there? Well, by gniza, you have to Sefer Torah that's worn out, you have to go and bury it and hide it. And says the Gemara, shom tehei gnizasa. It's left here, and that's where its gniza is. That's where it's left to be. It's not going to be taken away from there. Okay, so this is the conclusion of explaining all the different halachas that are mentioned in this braisa, why they all block the tumah in this opening, this window. Another halacha the Gemara says, Amar Rav said, Bakoil oisin mechitze. With any kind of material, you can make a partition. This halacha of mechitze is whether we're talking here regarding the subject we're talking about for tumah, to separate between one room and another, or a mechitze that would be used even for Shabbos, to make a mechitze that's 10 tvachim high, for mechitza of Shabbos, for a shusayachid. So you can make mechitza with any kind of material. Chutz mi melach, or revav, besides salt or fats. These are things that will not remain in its place. The salt is going to crumble down, or the fats could melt. So that can be used as a mechitza. Shmuel says, afilu melach. No, salt is sturdy enough that it could be used as a partition. Rav Papa said about this. Rav and Shmuel are not arguing here. Shmuel was talking about this, the salt that comes from Zdaim, or maybe the Yama Melach. That's the salt that's very thick and very, very hard, and it remains in its place. And melach is streiknis, and this is melach is streiknis, which is basically the kind of salt that we have, which is salt that even after you pile it up, it will fall apart. And then the Gemara says now another thing though to explain how Rav and Shmuel don't argue. The Omar Rabbe. Now that Rabbe said, Oisa Odom Shnei Tzibure Melach, that when you have a mavi is this alleyway that is enclosed from three sides and it's open on the fourth side, and Chachamim were geyser that you have to have a lechi and a kaira, or a lechi and a kaira in order to be able to carry inside of it. So Rabbi said about this that you can have shnei tzibure melach, you could have two piles of salt by the two sides of the opening of this mavi, umaniach aleim kaira. And you can place on top of these two piles of salt that kaira, that cross beam, in order for it to be the eidov, to be able to carry inside this mavi. And the reason is that this is going to be sturdy enough. Shaham melach ma'medes es, because the salt will hold up that beam on top of it, and va'kaira ma'medes es melach, and the beam, the cross beam on top of the salt, will hold down and keep the salt in place as well. So over there, it's going to be okay. So if so, I can say afilu melech estreiknis. Both Rav and Shmuel were talking about the kind of salt that we have, not necessarily this salt from Yama Melech, from Sidon. And v'loi pligi, it's not an argument between them. If there's a beam on top of the salt, after you build this partition of salt, so the beam holds it in place, so there Shmuel said that you can make a partition with salt. And Rav was talking about where there's no beam on it, so therefore the salt will fall apart. Going back to the Mishnah said, you have to distance your mill from your friend's wall. Gimel menashechev, it's 3 tvachim from the lower stone of the mill, shein arba menarechev, which is 4 tvachim from the higher stone, which is narrower. So that's the distance. Now, the Gemara says, my time, what's the reason that you have to distance the mill from a wall? Mishum tiraya. So similarly, the reason is because of the vibrations when you are grinding. The Gemara, how could that be? Because what Tanya and Abraisa we learned, Vishal Chamayr. Even if you have a smaller mill that's with a donkey, that is used with a donkey, the donkey is the one that does the work of the mill doing what it does, the grind. So over there it's smaller, and over there it has a different name. So shloisha mina istrabil. You have to remove it from the wall, 3 from the lower stone of this mill, which is called an istrabil. Shein arba min keles, which is 4 tvachim from the keles. So, but the question though is, hasam mai tiraya ikke. This smaller mill, what kind of vibrations are there? It's so small that it's something so light it doesn't shake, it doesn't vibrate the ground at all when you do the work with it. Ella, says the Gemara, we must say, Mishum Kala, that the reason why you're not allowed to have a mill close to the person's wall is because of the voice, the sound, the noise. So Rashi says either the people that are actually doing the work there with this donkey are screaming, or they make a noise, or even just the noise of the mill itself when it's grinding. It's the noise itself that's going to be a damage or is going to be disturbing to the neighbor. That's the reason you have to remove it. Then the Mishnah said, "Vesatano shloishim menakalya." An oven also has the base, the bottom that's built that is wider, so you have to remove from the bottom part of it 3 tvachim. Shein arba min hasofa. Then the actual oven that's on top of the base, it's narrower, so it's 4 tvachim from the top part from the wall. And here it's because of the heat of the oven. So Abaye says about this, Shma Mina, from here you can learn about the size of an oven. That Kalya, the Tana, the top part of the oven that's on the base of the oven, Tefach. It's 1 tefach narrower than the base. Nafke what's the relevance of this? When you're selling a person an oven, to know exactly what kind of size oven, what it has to be, that it's 1 tefach narrower than the base. Tosfos says here, the Gemara could have said the same thing regarding what it says in the size of the mill, but the Gemara doesn't say it because over there apparently it was something that was known, and over here though regarding this it was something that's not so known, wasn't always so specific, and therefore the Gemara is saying that this is the shear that we learn from the Mishnah that's relevant for Mekcha Memker. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, other halachas regarding neighbors, what you're not allowed to do in your own property that can cause then damage to a neighbor. A person should not put an oven inside his house. So we're talking here about a house. There's the bottom floor, and then there's the top floor, and someone living on the top. So you shouldn't place an oven inside your house in the bottom floor. Elohim kain yesh al gabav goiva arba amis. Unless you have a space separating between your oven 4 amis. So a lot of space. 4 amis you have to have between the top of your oven and the ceiling, so that the heat shouldn't affect the ceiling. It can cause a fire or can damage the top floor. If you place the oven on a second floor, so over there, so then this oven needs to have a floor that has good plaster. Say the floor could be made out of wood, so you have to have a plaster to separate, to protect the floor from the heat of the oven. 3 tvachim. Ubekira, if you have a smaller oven, which is a kira, which is not as hot as the tanur, then tefach. Then 1 tefach is enough to protect from the heat of this oven. Now, after this, even after a person takes these precautions and he follows what Chazal told him to have the space, whether on the bottom floor, whether on the top floor. If though his oven did cause a fire and it did damage, he has to pay for any damages that he causes, even though he did exactly the way he was told to do. But nevertheless, if it causes a damage, he still is responsible. Rab Shimon says no, he's not going to be responsible. All of the shiurim that Chazal said that you have to separate between you and your neighbor, or the top floor or the bottom floor. Why was it said? That if you took all these precautions, as Chazal said, then if it causes damage, it'll be potter from any damage that happened. It's not his fault, it's a total aynus. Also regarding this house, you're in the bottom floor, so you shouldn't open a store, a bakery basically, on the bottom floor. And when you have the person that's living on Orvashol Tabon, or a person that's a dyer, also has a lot of pots that are cooking the dye and there's a lot of heat. If you're on the bottom floor and you're under someone that lives upstairs that has a storage, and he's storing things there, and the heat of what you're doing downstairs will ruin his storage upstairs. You also can't have a barn and bring animals into the bottom floor. that will, the bad odor from your barn downstairs will ruin whatever he's storing upstairs. Be'emes, so the other gersi here is be'emes amru. It was, in truth it was said. This is an expression that's used when this is like a psak din lahalacha that nobody argues about. That beyayin, if what you're storing upstairs is wine, hitiru, then you can have a bakery downstairs. The heat or the smoke that comes from the fire doesn't ruin the wine. But avaloy refes bakar. But even with wine, if it's being stored upstairs, you still can't have a barn downstairs because that bad odor will ruin the wine. Okay, so the Gemara starts with the beginning of the Mishnah where it spoke about the oven, and the Mishnah said that when it comes to a tanur which is a hotter oven, so in the plaster that you have on the floor, you have to have 3 tvachim of a plaster. So the Gemara asks on this, Vatanya, in a brayse we learned betanur. If you have this oven that's hotter, arba, so you have to have 4 tvachim of a plaster. Ubekira, and when it comes to a kira, which is an oven smaller, less heat, shloisha. Over there you have to have 3. So regarding the kira as well, the Mishnah said different. Regarding the kira, the Mishnah said only 1 tefach is enough. And regarding Gatana, the Mishnah said 3. Amar Abayes, Abai answers, Kitanya hi b'denach. That Bryce is talking about the ovens that are being used by a baker that has the fire on all the time, so it's much more heat. The Tana Didan kikirit denach. A private oven used by a person is going to be the same, which our oven is the tanur is a hotter oven, but that's going to be the same like the kira of the nachtaimen, which is 3 tvachim. Okay, so but the kids say the Mishnah, the Mishnah is talking about a private oven, and the Bryce is talking about the oven of a baker. Then the Mishnah said, you're not allowed to open up your store downstairs when there's storage upstairs. So Tana, we learned that if the barn that the person had downstairs was there before the person upstairs decided to turn it into a storage, then mutter. Then it's going to be allowed to leave your barn there because you were there first. And if you had your barn there first, the one upstairs can't come and decide that he's going to turn it into a storage. Okay, we had this Gemara brought before about this, the machlokes of Abaye and Rava about this, whether the one that comes first has to distance himself. But here the Gemara is saying, Kipshute, what the Brayse says, that if you came first with your barn downstairs, then the one upstairs can't then tell you to leave if he wants to turn his upstairs into a oitzer, or to store things. So now the Gemara has different Ibayas about this. So Abaye asked the following shaila. Kibed v'ribetz le'oitzer. What's if the person living upstairs did not yet have the storage, but he did things that made it clear that he's planning on using it for a storage? He swept out the place. Ribetz means he sprinkles water to settle the dust. So he's preparing to make it the oitzer. Mahu. What's the halacha now? Are you allowed to bring in your animals and make a barn downstairs after the one upstairs showed that he did something that he's going to be used for a storage? Furthermore, riba b'chaleinis mahu. What's if not only did he sweep it out, he actually made a lot of openings. He made changes in the walls, that he opened up a lot of windows for the storage. You need a lot of windows and the air circulation for the storage that he has there. So mahu, what's going to be the halacha here? So he did even something more to mamish in the physical structure for preparing it for storage. Are you now still allowed to bring in animals downstairs to make a barn there? Or, this is actually, according to Rashi, you're not good as this, the Bach says, but the Gemara here says, Achsadra tachasayitzemau. What's if you have an achsadra downstairs, it's like a pavilion, it's open, you don't have walls. Are you allowed to bring in over there your animals under a storage that is going to be upstairs? Or, Bana aliyeh al gabe beisai. What's if the person on the second floor builds a third floor? He builds a third floor that's going to be used now for a storage. Right, that's according to Rashi, that he's going to be using the third floor as a storage, or other Rishonim say he's building a third storage, a third floor that is, because he wants to use the second floor for the storage. So over here, Rashi says, the Gemara is saying, he didn't just stam sweep, he didn't just stam do a change in the structure of opening windows. He did even much more, he built an entire floor. So Rashi says, the Gemara is saying, even in Tim Tzalaimar, that in the previous cases, the person didn't do something significant enough to show that he's going to be using this as a oitzer, but if he mamish built another floor, over here, there's room to say that this is definitely something that now you're not allowed to make a barn underneath this, to ruin his oitzer. Mahu, what's the halacha in this case? And the Gemara doesn't answer this. Teiku, this all remains in Ibaya. Another shaila similar, Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yeshua asks, Tamri v'rimayni. If a person brought in dates or pomegranates, what's going to be the halacha here? So these are things that he brings in that is not. This is not the real oitza that the person wants to use it for. He wants to use it for grain or for wine, and those are things that could be damaged by the heat downstairs or by the barn downstairs. Dates and pomegranates don't get ruined by that. But the question is, since he already started bringing things in to store there, so then that means that he's already using it for storage, and he's going to bring in grain there as well. So you're not allowed to make your barn downstairs. And then the Mishnah said, "Be'emes beyayin hitiru v'chulu," that the halacha said that when if it's wine that's being stored upstairs, then it's no problem to have a bakery downstairs. So Tana and a Braisa we learned beyayin hitiru. The reason why with wine you can have a bakery downstairs, the heat and the smoke that comes from the baking downstairs actually improves the wine. It's not a problem for the wine. You have sometimes smoked wine; it adds a flavor to the wine. But however, you can't put a barn that is downstairs because there it will ruin the wine. The bad odor will ruin the wine. Now, regarding this though, Omer Rav Yosef, Haidi done with our wine that we have here in Bavel, Afila kutra de even just the smoke that comes from a candle, nami kashule, is also going to be a problem. Is also going to ruin the wine. So therefore, you can't have any kind of bakery, any smoke, any heat downstairs, even for the wine. Rav Sheshes, and Rav Sheshes said it's not only a barn, but even va'aspasta, even to bring in aspasta, which is animal feed, which is moist and causes a certain bad odor, kerefes bakar damya. It's the same like having a barn downstairs, and whatever the barn damage will cause for the storage upstairs, the same is with this aspasta that you're not allowed to bring it into the house downstairs.